And my aim is to complete this chapter by the end of mm, formation of the USSR. According to the Constitution proclaimed in 1924, all the Soviet republics such as Russian, RSF, RSFSR full form was Russian Soviet Federation of Soviet Russian. It is, the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. रशिया, जॉर्जिया, आर्मेनिया, तुर्कमेनिस्तान का डेमोनिम है तुर्कमेन, यूक्रेनियन, अजरबैजान कॉर्पोरेशन, अजरबैजान का डेमोनिम क्या है? अजरबैजान, DEMANY, अजरबैजानी, उसका नाम है अजेरीज. They were brought under one union, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics (USSR) के full form. In 1946, when another constitution came into force, there were 11 republics continuing. Okay. These republics were formed on the basis of principle of nationality and the equality of all nationalities. According to the constitution, they were given the right to secede from the union. The constitution gave each nationality of the former Russian Empire the right to promote its own language and culture. The cultural and economic development of the Asian republics was very impressive, particularly to people from one party rule to dictatorship. The political development of the Soviet Union was accompanied by gross violation of individual liberty and the principles of democracy. The Soviets, which had been formed during the struggle for revolution, had been acclaimed as the true, authentic form of democracy. The political development of Soviet Union was accompanied by gross violation of individual liberty and principles of democracy. The Soviets which had been formed, okay, the Soviet like Russian, Ukrainian, Turkmen, Azerbaijan, Caucasian, Georgian, etc., which had been proclaimed as the true authentic. The Soviet Union formed during the struggle for revolution, the Russian Revolution, had been acclaimed as a true and authentic form of democracy. अच्छा मतलब जब struggle for revolution चल रहा था that is मतलब protests are basically a part of democracy. That's just underlining the fact. They involved vast masses of people in the process of decision making, which affected their lives and brought millions of common people into direct political activity. A number of political parties and groups, such as the Mensheviks, the Socialist, they involved vast masses of people in the process of. Achha, just important. First 15 minutes starts. The political, the political development of the Union was accompanied by gross violation of individual liberty and principles of democracy. The Soviet, which had been formed during the struggle for revolution, had been acclaimed. Sorry. The Soviets formed during the revolution had been acclaimed as a true and authentic form of democracy. They involved vast masses of people in the process of decision making, which affected their lives and brought millions of people into direct political activity, which affected their lives and brought millions of common people into direct political activity, which affected their lives. Yes, it did affect their lives. And it also brought millions of common people into direct. Okay, so this is the true and authentic form of democracy wherein all the masses of people are involved in the process of decision making, and it is not just some militia or some creamy layer of society which is taking the political activity into their hands. So that is why the Soviets, during their struggle, during the Russian Revolution, acclaimed means praised, as the true form of democracy. A number of political parties and groups such as the Mensheviks, the Socialists, the Bolsheviks. This is a map. But this is Russia. Okay. This is Kazakhstan. This also became a part of it. This is Kyrgyzstan. This is Tajikistan. अच्छा तो the Soviet came down as India. अच्छा Tajikistan तो would touch India ना? No, Tajikistan is a little far away from India. I think so. This is Jammu Kashmir, POK. Either it is like Afghanistan and here it is Tajikistan. I'm not sure. I have to look into the map. And then we have Turkmenistan. Then we have Uzbekistan. Achha, these all were parts of the republic. Okay. Then we have the Baki is the capital of जॉर्जिया का तो tbilisi है. What is Baki? Azerbaijan. Okay, okay. Hmm. ठीक है. Here it is Ukraine. अच्छा, Ukraine was earlier part of it. The revolutionaries had their members. अच्छा, हाँ, various political parties and groups such as the Mensheviks, the Socialist Revolutionaries had their members in the Soviets. Okay. हाँ, Soviets were a group of workers, पीछे में था Russian Revolution. During the Civil War, later when there were attempts to organize uprisings, they were eliminated from the political life of people. Okay. The Bolshevik Party, later known as the Communist Party of the Socialist Revolution. Okay, so the Bolshevik Party became the sole political party in the country. Even with this party, there was a gradual elimination of all democratic decision-making processes. The Bolshevik Party had earlier developed under the Tsarist autocracy, which had made it impossible for Bolsheviks to function legally in the open. As a party which was working to bring about the revolutionary overthrow of the existing order, it developed a certain system of functioning that allowed debates and controversies, sometimes very fierce ones within the party, but obliged the members to follow the once decisions once they had been taken by the majority. Okay, so that means so this can be quoted in the example for essay na, of the democracy or freedom of speech types of matter. As a idea that when it was working had developed under the Tsarist autocracy, which had made it impossible for the Bolsheviks to function legally in the open as a party which was working to bring about the revolutionary overthrow of the existing order. It developed a certain system of functioning that allowed debates and controversies, sometimes very fierce ones, within the party, but obliged the members to follow the decisions once they had been taken by the. This can be given in that example. No? PYQ में कहा था inter party and intra party democracy. Example कहा जाएगा. Good one. This way of functioning of the Bolshevik party continued as long as Lenin, the greatest, continued as long as Lenin was alive. There were occasions when other communist leaders openly opposed Lenin's views, and there were instances where Lenin was left isolated within the party. However, the expression of these differences did not lead to the suppression of the people who differed. Okay, this is inter. There were occasions when inter-party intra-party this did not lead to the suppression of people who differed. The democracy within the party was maintained. So this entire paragraph is about intra-party democracy. After the death of Lenin in 1924, after the death of Lenin, he died young, no? 50, 53, 54 years old, I mean. Maybe the, after the death of Lenin in 1924, there was a fierce struggle for power within the party. There were serious differences over the means and methods to be adopted for building. Okay, so there were serious differences over the means and methods to be adopted for building socialism, also on whether it was at all possible to build socialism in one country, or whether the primary task of the Soviet government was should be the promotion of world revolution. Okay, that there were differences on the question of collectivization and methods to be adopted for industrialization. The method which was later adopted in resolving these differences was not just taking a decision by the majority and going ahead with implementing it, but also treating those who had opposed the decision. Okay, so the eradication of the intra-party democracy, treating those who had opposed the decision as enemies of the party and the country. Earlier, it was not that they were being persecuted, but now it is that they are being uh, alienated from the party. Next, coming to the first major struggle inside the party took place between Stalin and Trotsky. Stalin became the general secretary of the party. Okay, Stalin was the general secretary of the party. Trotsky's role in the revolution and the subsequently as the foreign minister. Okay, he was the foreign minister, and still later as the war minister, is considered to be second only to Lenin's. Okay. In 1927, however, Stalin emerged victorious and Trotsky was expelled. Acha, Trotsky was expelled from the party. In 19, he was exiled and got him assassinated also in Mexico, where he had been living for some years. So you see that the intra-party democracy has totally been eradicated by now. So, what is Trotskyism? Trotskyism is the political ideology and branch of Marxism and Leninism developed by Leon Trotsky along with some other members of our class. What is this? Emphasizing permanent revolution, international socialism, and workers' democracy, differing from Stalinism by opposing socialism in one country. Okay. So Stalin believed in, which is more correct. I think so. Trotskyism and Stalinism. in so Trotskyism, so Stalinism and Trotskyism, right? Difference. Trotskyism, Trotskyism, international socialism, socialism in one country. In my opinion, it should be socialism in one country first and then promoting it worldwide so that people themselves. But starting with internationalism itself, so this was the first difference: Trotskyism and Stalinism. The differences, or okay, international socialism, or it is also permanent revolution. This is the key word: permanent revolution. मतलब believe that socialism could not survive in isolation. In a backward country like Russia, it required immediate and worldwide proletarian uprisings to succeed. So do I need to describe it? थोड़ा describe कर देते हैं ना. So what we meant to say is Stalinism said that that socialist society could be built in Russia without the global context. Fine. In Russia and USSR. USSR is Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And Trotskyism. I believe that socialism could not exist in isolation in a backward country like USSR. It required immediate worldwide, okay, worldwide proletarian uprisings to succeed. ठीक है? Then the economic part. This was this was primary theory. Okay. And then it was Stalinism, Trotskyism, rapid industrialization. Sorry, this side. Rapid industrialization, gradual collective, collectivization of agriculture, and he started with NEP, National Education Policy. New economic policy, forced collectivization, and 5-year plans, not rapid or immediate. Okay? So these are the main differences of this budget. This is the difference between small and measurement. So what is proletariat? Common people earn money by working and generally don't have property. अच्छा, have property, don't have property. Bourgeoisie is the middle class. Bourgeois. Arrested and executed. Okay. Genevieve and Bukharin. He was also executed. Zenovi. And what about Bukharin? He also gradually in the 1930s, in a country which professed building a new type of society and a higher type of civilization, the dictatorship of one man took shape. That is Stalin. All power got concentrated in his hand. and was supposed to be the source of all wisdom. Okay. His decisions could not be questioned. So there are two terms now. Working class. So one is the dictatorship of the proletariat, and one is the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. So dictatorship did not mean नहीं इंग्लिश सही है हम पता नहीं हम इसमें कैसा प्रचार करके यही बोलते हैं हेल्थ ऑफ पर्सनल हाँ Now I'm getting to know what is collectivization. Yeah. अच्छा है। Sorry for nothing. So, there are two kinds of dictatorship. The two terms for dictatorship. One is the dictatorship for the proletariat, and one is the dictatorship for the bourgeoisie. Now, in the 1930s, the country in Russia, dictatorship of one man took shape, that is of Stalin. All hands were in the hands of Stalin. He was the source of all wisdom. So his decision could not be, it was unquestionable. In the writings of some socialist thinkers and leaders, dictatorship of the proletariat was envisaged as a stage in the building up of socialism. So this was envisaged, this was envisioned, envisaged, predicted, predicted, forecast, foretell, okay, envisaged, envisage, okay, okay, not envisage, envisage, okay, the pronunciation is envisaged, I'm sorry, envisaged, envisaged, let it go. All capitalist countries were viewed as dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, even when they had the democratic. Okay, so they were viewed by the Russians as the dictatorships of the bourgeoisie. Why were they? Why were they so? Because it was because in the state in these countries was seen as an instrument for the maintenance of the bourgeois predominance. So the bourgeois predominance was the key factor of these democratic political institutions. And the dictatorship of the proletariat, in the same way, was viewed as a state which could use its power to maintain the domination of the working class, proletariats, and bourgeoisie. There are two terms, right? Bourgeoisie is the middle class, and proletariat is the person, the common man who does not even own property or who earns money by worker. The worker class basically is the proletariat. The dictatorship now, this in the way the Russian political system developed, it came to be um, mean first it was the dictatorship of the party, and by virtue of Stalin's domination of the party, the dictatorship of Stalin. It was the dictatorship of Stalin, Joseph Stalin, and after his death, his phenomenon was described by them as the cult of personality. As in India, also there have been many leaders whose I won't say dictatorship. Definitely, it was not a dictatorship. It was a democratic at the end of the day. But they too had a cult of personality. For example, Jawaharlal Nehru, to some extent, Mrs. Gandhi. The dictatorship of or the cult of personality. Okay, so the dictatorship has been morphed as or as so to say, it has been under the facade of the cult of personality, under the facade of under the facade of cult of personality. Okay, so the dictatorship was under the facade of a cult of personality. The assassination was, however, utilized by Stalin to launch repression against anyone who was suspected of the slightest disloyalty. It soon developed into what was to be known as the Great Purge, the beginning of people who perished. Okay, so it was a great purge. Okay, so this is the term. There was a lot. What is purge? Purge means cleansing, right? Cleansing action. Purge. Like we talk about this purge in Mao Zedong's period as well. So this purge, which started in Stalin's period, that is persecution of any person who opposed Stalin or his ideology, was persecuted, was purged. So we use the term purged even for uh, this person, what is his name? Xi Jinping's rule also, right? We say that he's purging under the name of corruption. He's purging all his opposition, and people get a so to say, a blanket view that it is actually corruption which is being wiped out, but it is actually
not the case. It is uh, one party dictatorship, which is being uh, how to say cemented on the grounds of purging opposition under the facade of corruption. Under the facade of corruption. So the Great Purge. ये term आया है दो तीन बार न्यूज में भी सुने पता नहीं था. Anyways, the number of people who escaped purge is now being fully estimated. Their number was enormous. Okay, so a lot of people were. These included many prominent communist leaders, veterans of the revolution, writers, artists, scientists, military and civil officers, as well as some of the leaders of communist parties of other countries as well. So for a long time, the people outside the Soviet Union who were sympathetic to socialism and in their own countries were involved in the struggle against colonial rule or capitalist exploitation did not realize the enormity of the crimes that were being committed in the name of socialism. One reason for this was that the Soviet Union was surrounded by countries which were hostile to her and to socialism. Some of these countries made no secret of their aggressive designs against the Soviet Union and declared that they would destroy communism. Communism, communism was also many of these countries held many other people under colonial subjugation. The economic system of these countries bred inequality and resulted in mass unemployment. Okay, some of the countries made no secret of their aggressive designs against the Soviet Union, and most of them, like for example, the United States of America, it made no secret that they would destroy communism. Many of these countries, acha, Germany, Italy, right? The what is it? Mussolini and Nazi Hitler, Adolf Hitler, they were hell bent on destroying communism. Many countries held many other people under colonial subjugation. Yes, Germany had colonies, Italy had colonies, Britain had vast sum of colonies, so had France, etc. And resulted in the economic system of these countries bred inequality, yes. For instance, let us see in India, there was mass unemployment, misery, poverty above the roof. Repression inside the Soviet Union came to be seen Repression inside the Soviet Union came to be seen in the context of Soviet Union's efforts at preserving her independence as well as the socialist system in an extremely hostile world. So this was basically a her purging Soviet Union, purging the various you know leaders and scientists, socialists, scientists, communists, military and civil officers, revolutionary veterans, writers, etc., was seen as a strive made under the frontage of what do you call it? Preserving her independence and preserving the socialism of USSR, the foreign policy of the Soviet state. The international role of the Soviet Union demarcated her from all great powers of the time. She was kept out of the peace conference held in Paris after the war was prepared for treaties for. In 1921, she entered into treaties with Iran and Afghanistan, which strengthened the independence and sovereignty of these countries. A treaty was signed in the same year with the government of Mustafa Kemal, which was engaged in war to restore the territorial integrity of Turkey. Mummy?